Hello, everyone. I am Beth, and Erica is wrapping a peer review that was due yesterday today, so you are stuck with me. I will try to be worth the swap. The most expensive line item in most 401k plans is not the contribution rate. It is the fund nobody bothered to evaluate. An investor who stays in an actively managed fund charging 0.75% instead of an index fund charging 0.05% pays an extra 0.7% per year. On a $250,000 balance growing at 7%, that gap compounds to roughly $85,000 of extra fees over 30 years.
Chen here. The typical plan menu has 10 to 20 funds, a target date series, some index options, and usually an international fund, a bond fund, and a stable value option. Some plans add a company stock option and a brokerage window. The decision space looks complex, but the critical variable is simple. What does each fund cost?
Nova here. Last episode covered vesting schedules and what you actually own. Today we go into the fund menu itself. This audience already understands expense ratios and the difference between passive and active management, so we are skipping the basics.
May here. The one decision that moves the needle on a 401k is the expense ratio of the fund you are in. Alpha from active management is rare and not reliably persistent. Topic: costs are certain and compound in both directions.
Liam here. The audience watching this has already figured out that expense ratio matters, so we are going straight to the menu itself. What do you actually see when you log in? Which fund choices make sense for a typical investor? And when do you need to build the DIY version instead of taking the default?
Let us make sure you know who is talking before they start.
Chen here. Frameworks age better than facts. I will invest in frameworks.
Nova here. I will treat outliers as clues, not noise.
May here. I came to make connections that surprise both of us.
Liam here. Questions outperform answers in rooms like this.
That is the lineup for the episode, and we are opening the book on the topic now. A target date fund is a prepackaged allocation that automatically shifts from growth to income as the target year approaches. Buy the 2050 fund at age 35, and you are roughly 90% in stocks today, gradually drifting toward 40 to 50% by 2050. No rebalancing decisions, no annual allocation review. For most participants, that is a reasonable trade.
The glide path is the defining mechanical feature. Different fund families run different glide paths. Vanguard's target date funds reach their most conservative allocation about 7 years past the target date, while Fidelity's Freedom funds land at 46% stocks at the target date. While neither is wrong, the question is whether the plan's glide path matches your actual risk tolerance and timeline.
Liam here. Something worth asking about the target date funds on your plan menu. What share class are they? The same target date fund often comes in an institutional share class at 0.08% and a retail investor class at 0.15 to 0.47%. In a large employer plan, you are almost certainly getting the institutional class, but it is worth verifying.
De pari ope, ATA, target date funds hold the Qualified Default Investment Alternative designation under Department of Labor regulation. That means if a participant never makes a fund election, the plan can default them into a target date fund and the fiduciary gets a liability shield. Good context, Chen. It is not an accident that most plans default here.
Building the DIY equivalent inside a 401k means finding three things on the fund menu. First, a low-cost US total stock market or S&P 500 index fund. Second, an international equity index fund. Third, a bond index fund.
The fund names on the menu give you most of the signal you need. The word index in the name is a good start. Institutional class funds with tickers like BIN, IX, or FXA, IX are the strongest cost signal. Expense ratios below 0.10% are the target zone.
Good point, Beth. One thing to flag on the international fund, many plan menus offer a developed markets international fund, something like an EAFE index fund covering Europe, Australasia, and the Far East. That is not the same as total international, which also includes emerging markets. If your plan only has a developed markets option, your international sleeve is underweight emerging markets like China and India by design. It is worth knowing which type you are holding.
The honest trade-off of the DIY approach is the rebalancing obligation. A target date fund rebalances internally and automatically. A DIY 3-fund portfolio inside the plan drifts as markets move. The stock sleeve grows in good years and the bond sleeve grows in bad ones, and the investor must manually rebalance, typically once per year. Stick around for the expense ratio math, because that is where the DIY case either wins or loses.
Well, here is the expense ratio math that makes the DIY case. At a 0.15% expense ratio, $250,000 growing at 7% reaches approximately $1,900,000 after 30 years. Swap in a 0.45% fund, and the extra fees compounded annually reduce that to approximately $1,800,000. That drag of roughly $100,000 is the cost of a 0.30% expense ratio gap over a career. Not bad for a number most people never look at on their plan portal.
The math is nonlinear because the drag compounds with the principal. T.e., each year, the extra expense ratio eats into a larger balance. A 0.3% drag on a $50,000 balance is $150. On a $300,000 balance in year 12, it is $900 per year leaking out.
The practical question is, at what expense ratio spread does the DIY effort break even against the convenience of target date? My working threshold is anything above 0.20% spread. One rebalancing event per year takes about 15 minutes, and the fee savings show up in year 1.
The honest conclusion is plan-specific. Many large employer plans now offer institutional target date funds at 0.08 to 0.12%. At that price, the DIY spread is small enough that the rebalancing obligation is not worth it for most participants. Smaller employer plans with older menus are where the DIY switch still wins.
Some 401k plans offer a brokerage window, a self-directed brokerage account embedded within the plan that gives access to the full exchange-traded fund and mutual fund universe rather than just the plan menu. Fidelity calls theirs Brokerage Link. Schwab calls theirs the Personal Choice Retirement Account. The feature is plan-specific and not universally available.
The legitimate use case for the brokerage window is an investor who has a specific allocation need the plan menu cannot meet. For example, a plan with no international equity index fund option might push a sophisticated investor toward the brokerage window to buy VXUS or a comparable exchange-traded fund. For most participants, the core plan menu is sufficient, and the brokerage window adds complexity without benefit.
The risk profile is real. The brokerage window sits outside the qualified default investment alternative framework, which means the plan fiduciary is not on the hook for investment outcomes the way they are for menu funds. The participant assumes full responsibility for every decision made in the window. That is appropriate for someone who understands what they are doing and genuinely needs the access.
Worth naming, the brokerage window is also where participants occasionally use retirement funds to buy individual stocks or speculative positions. The feature itself is neutral. What matters is having a clear reason before you open it. If the reason is your plan menu has 0 low-cost index options, open it.
If you joined a plan and never made a fund election, you are in the qualified default investment alternative, almost certainly a target date fund. Knowing which target date fund and what it charges is the minimum due diligence. Log in, find the current fund holdings list and check the expense ratio on whatever you are actually in.
The actively managed fund hiding in the menu is more common than it should be. It has a name like Large Cap Growth Fund or Balanced Growth Portfolio, and it sits next to a fund called S&P 500 Index Institutional with an expense ratio of 0.03%. The actively managed version often charges 10 to 20 times as much. Good catch, Liam. Many participants have never compared the two side by side.
The action step is mechanical. Open the plan portal, pull the fund menu, and sort by expense ratio. Build your target allocation starting from the cheapest fund in each asset class. That is the entire fund selection process for most participants.
Good point, Nova. And anyone curious about why the plan menu looks the way it does, the plan sponsor is required to have an investment policy statement that documents the criteria for adding and removing funds from the menu. That document is available to participants on request under ERISA. It will tell you what expense ratio targets the plan fiduciary uses.
If you forget everything else from this episode, remember, the expense ratio on your fund is the only cost that compounds against you every single year with certainty, regardless of market performance. Pull up your plan today and check whether the fund you are in is the cheapest one covering your asset class. Drop your plan name and the expense ratio on your current fund in the comments. Okay, it is quiz time. Let's find out what's stuck. Think through each question carefully before you answer.
Like this one if it clicked. Subscribe if you want next week's in your feed on day 1.
Under Department of Labor Regulation 29 CFR 2550, which of the following accurately describes the Qualified Default Investment Alternative designation? The correct answer is D, a safe harbor investment default that shields the plan fiduciary from liability when participants who make no fund election are invested in a designated compliant option, such as a target date fund.
Two participants each invest $250,000 in their 401k, growing at 7% annually. Participant A is in a fund with a 0.10% expense ratio. Participant B is in a fund with a 0.45% expense ratio. Over 30 years, approximately how much does the expense ratio difference cost participant B? The correct answer is A, approximately $45,000 to $60,000 in cumulative lost growth due to the 0.35% annual drag, compounding on an increasing balance.
Which of the following is the most appropriate reason for a 401k participant to use a plan's brokerage window option? The correct answer is C. The plan menu lacks a low-cost international equity index fund, and the participant wants to add international exposure using an exchange-traded fund available through the brokerage window.
The core takeaway is the expense ratio check. I, the fund you are in inside your 401k compounds costs against you every year with certainty. Picking the cheapest fund in each asset class is the single highest leverage fund decision available to every plan participant.
If you take one action this week, pull up your plan portal and look at the expense ratio column on every fund in your current allocation. 3 years from now, you will be glad you made the switch if you find you have been in a high-cost fund, and you will be glad you checked if you were already in a low-cost option.
Next episode, the after-tax contribution bucket and the Mega-Backdoor Roth. Wait until you see the Section 415 math. There are high earners leaving $30,000 to $45,000 of Roth contribution room unused every year because their plan supports after-tax contributions, and they never asked.
If this episode helped clarify the target date versus DIY decision, subscribe so you get the rest of the series. The expense ratio math we walked today is the foundation for understanding the Mega-Backdoor episode that follows.
Keep studying.
Trade-offs are the only honest currency. Spend wisely. See you next time.
Text from Erica. She says she is quietly proud. She rarely says that, and never lightly.
Beth, signing off.